Let me share something with you that happens every single night. Something so ordinary that you've probably never questioned it, yet so profound that it could completely reshape how you understand yourself. Every evening, as you lay down and close your eyes, you voluntarily surrender everything you believe yourself to be. Your name dissolves into darkness. Your career, your relationships, your anxieties about tomorrow, all of it vanishes without a trace. And here's what makes this remarkable. You don't resist. You actually look forward to it. You climb into bed seeking this dissolution, this temporary death of everything you call me. Think about what's actually happening in those moments before sleep takes you. You feel yourself slipping away, and there's no panic, no grasping, no desperate attempt to hold on to your identity. The person who spent all day defending their opinions, protecting their reputation, worrying about their future, that person simply evaporates. And you let it happen. Every night, you practice the very thing that spiritual seekers spend decades trying to achieve, the complete letting go of the ego. Yet you do it effortlessly, naturally, as if some deeper wisdom in you knows that this dissolution isn't death, but renewal. I've watched this mystery unfold in my own life for years, and the more I observe it, the more extraordinary it becomes. During your waking hours, you carry this persistent sense of being someone, of being the central character in the story of your life. There's an observer, a witness, the one who watches your thoughts and experiences. This watcher feels permanent, doesn't it? It feels like the most real thing about you. But then, night comes, and this supposedly permanent observer simply switches off. Where does it go? What happens to the one who was so certain of its own existence just hours before? You might think you're unconscious during deep sleep, but that's not quite accurate. Something continues. Your body breathes, your heart beats, your cells regenerate. Some profound intelligence orchestrates millions of processes without any input from the you who takes credit for everything during the day. The body knows how to heal a wound, digest food, fight off infection, all without consulting the conscious mind that claims to be in charge. During sleep, this becomes undeniable. The conscious self vanishes, yet existence continues, perhaps more efficiently than when your ego is running the show. Now, consider dreams, those strange theaters of the night where entire worlds spring into being. You find yourself walking through landscapes you've never seen, having conversations with people who don't exist, experiencing emotions that feel absolutely real in the moment. Who creates these elaborate scenarios? The obvious answer would be you. But which you? The dreaming character within the dream certainly isn't creating it. That character is as surprised by events as anyone would be. And the waking you who would take credit for such creativity is supposedly absent, dissolved in sleep. So, who is the dreamer? Who is the artist painting these nightly visions? There's a kind of creativity at work during dreams that surpasses what most people achieve in their waking lives. Imagine trying to consciously construct a dream, to create an entire world with its own internal logic, populate it with characters who behave autonomously, and maintain it all coherently for hours. It would be exhausting, nearly impossible. Yet every night, this happens effortlessly. The same intelligence that keeps your heart beating and your cells dividing also weaves these intricate narratives without breaking a sweat. What does that tell you about the relationship between the conscious mind and the deeper intelligence that animates you? But let's go deeper, into that mysterious realm beyond dreams. You've been there countless times, though you can't remember a single moment of it. Deep sleep, the dreamless void where even the dream self disappears. Scientists call it non-REM sleep, the deepest stage of rest. For hours each night, you exist in a state where there are no thoughts, no sensations, no experiences whatsoever. No images flash through your mind. No storyline unfolds. There's nothing to report. nothing to remember. And yet, something is there. We know this because you wake up. You emerge from that emptiness refreshed, restored, somehow nourished by the nothingness. What is that state? Ancient wisdom traditions have a startling answer. That formless, contentless awareness you experience in deep sleep is actually closer to your true nature than anything you experience while awake. The Upanishads, those ancient Indian texts written thousands of years ago, describe three states of consciousness: waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, and suggest that deep sleep offers a glimpse of what they call turiya, pure consciousness itself. In that state, you're not experiencing anything, you're not aware of anything in particular, yet you are. You exist without the costume of personality, without the burden of individual identity. Mystics and sages have spent lifetimes trying to reach what they call enlightenment, unity with the absolute cosmic consciousness. They've meditated in caves, renounced worldly pleasures, subjected themselves to austere disciplines. But here's the paradox that should make you smile. You've already been there. Every single night, you dissolve into that same universal consciousness they seek. When your individual awareness vanishes in deep sleep, where does it go? It returns to the source, merges back into the ocean of being from which it temporarily arose. The wave subsides back into the water, and in the morning, it rises again. Think about the moment you wake up. How does you come back? One moment there's nothing, no thoughts, no sense of self, just vast emptiness. Then gradually, almost mysteriously, the world reassembles itself. First comes a dim awareness, a sensing without knowing what's being sensed. Then slowly, like a photograph developing, your identity reconstructs itself. Oh, I'm me. This is my bedroom. Today is Tuesday. I have that meeting at 10. All the pieces of your personal story fall back into place, and once again, you believe you're a separate individual navigating through life. But notice something crucial. You didn't do that reconstruction. The ego that takes credit for everything wasn't there to put itself back together. Something deeper, some intelligence operating beneath the surface of your conscious awareness, performed that miracle. Every morning, you're literally recreated, reconstituted from nothing. And the force doing this reconstruction is not the you that emerges from the process. It's the same intelligence that grew your body from a single cell, that keeps your immune system vigilant, that makes your eyes blink without being told. This intelligence has been running the show all along, and your conscious mind, your sense of being a separate self, is more like a passenger than a driver. Now here's where things get truly interesting, where the ground beneath your assumptions begins to shake. If you experience ego death every night and wake up fine, if your identity can completely dissolve and then reconstruct itself automatically, what does that say about the permanence of who you think you are? What if the waking state, this experience you're having right now as you listen to these words, is itself another kind of dream? What if consciousness, in its infinite creativity, is simply dreaming that it's a separate individual, playing the role of you with such commitment that you've forgotten it's a role? The Zen tradition has this unsettling koan. What was your original face before your parents were born? It points to something that exists before identity, before the construction of the personal self. That something is what you return to every night in deep sleep. It's what you are when the costume of personality is removed. And the suggestion from these ancient traditions, from the Upanishads, from Buddhist teachings, from mystical Christianity and Sufism, is that what you fundamentally are is not the changing, temporary identity, but the unchanging awareness in which that identity appears. People spend tremendous energy defending and maintaining their self-image, as if it were the most precious thing in existence. You worry about what others think. You protect your reputation. You try to become someone better, more successful, more worthy. But every night, you prove that you don't actually need any of that to exist. You let it all go without fear. and you survive just fine. More than survive, you're restored by that letting go. What if the struggle of daily life isn't about improving yourself, but about recognizing that the self you're trying to improve is as temporary and dreamlike as the characters in your nightly dreams? This isn't just philosophical speculation. This understanding can fundamentally alter how you move through life. Not by changing what you do. You'll still have responsibilities, relationships, goals, but by changing your relationship to all of it. When you recognize the impermanence of your identity, when you see that consciousness is what you are rather than something you possess, a certain lightness enters your experience. The mystics called it divine carelessness. Not carelessness in the sense of negligence, but a freedom from the desperate grasping that characterizes so much of human life. You start to hold your opinions a bit more loosely, knowing that the you who holds them will dissolve tonight anyway. You take your worries less seriously, recognizing that the worrier is a temporary construction. You stop clinging so tightly to outcomes, understanding that whether you succeed or fail, the deeper intelligence that operates during your sleep will continue to take care of what needs to be taken care of. There's a paradox here. You become more effective in life, not less, because you're no longer exhausting yourself with resistance and fear. Let me ask you something, and I want you to really sit with this question. What if the peace you seek isn't somewhere out there in the future, not dependent on circumstances changing or you becoming someone different? What if it's what you experience every night in deep sleep? That contentless, formless awareness that exists before thought, before identity, before the story of me begins. And what if that peace isn't separate from you, isn't something you need to achieve or deserve, but is actually what you are when everything else is stripped away? I'd love to hear how this lands for you. Sometimes we need to hear these ancient insights in contemporary language, in ways that connect to our actual daily experience rather than religious dogma. If something in this exploration resonates with you, if you feel that subtle recognition of truth, I genuinely hope you'll subscribe to this channel. Not because I need the numbers, but because these conversations matter. We're exploring the deepest questions of human existence together, and there's something powerful about creating a community of people who are willing to look honestly at the nature of consciousness and identity. And here's what I'm curious about. What's one thing you typically worry about during the day that seems to matter so much less after you've slept on it? Share that in the comments. Let's see what patterns emerge. Sometimes seeing how universal our concerns are helps us hold them more lightly. The ancient traditions spoke of this understanding as liberation, moksha, enlightenment. These words have become loaded with baggage, associated with monks and renunciates and people who've somehow transcended ordinary life. But what if liberation isn't about transcending life, but about recognizing what's already true? What if enlightenment isn't a future achievement, but a current reality that gets obscured by the belief in a separate self? Every night, that separate self proves its own unreality by vanishing. Every morning, it proves its temporary nature by appearing again, fresh and new, assembled from nothing. There's something that wants to resist this understanding. The ego, upon hearing that it's not as real or permanent as it thought, tends to panic. But what about me? What about my goals, my memories, my relationships? If I'm not who I think I am, what happens to all of that? And this is where we need to be clear. Nothing changes on the surface. You still have your name, your personality, your unique perspective. The difference is in identification. You're no longer exclusively identified with the temporary construction. You recognize yourself as the space in which that construction appears, the awareness that witnesses the whole play. This is why mystics throughout history have used the metaphor of the ocean and the wave. The wave has its temporary form, its brief moment of apparent individuality. It rises, it moves, it crashes against the shore, but it was never separate from the ocean. It's always been water, always been part of the larger whole. When the wave subsides, nothing is lost. The water returns to water. And when another wave rises, it's not exactly the same wave, but it's not different either. It's the ocean playing, consciousness expressing itself in temporary forms. You do this every night. The wave of your individual consciousness subsides into the ocean of pure awareness. And every morning, it rises again, taking on the familiar form of you. But now you know. Now you've seen through the illusion of permanent separation. And this knowing doesn't diminish your life. It enriches it. Colors become more vivid when you're not so worried about defending your opinions about them. Relationships become more intimate when you're not so invested in maintaining your self-image. Work becomes more creative when you're not so attached to the outcome being a certain way. The Buddhists talk about non-attachment, and in the West, we often misunderstand this as indifference or coldness, but that's not what it means. Non-attachment means full engagement with life without the desperate clinging that comes from believing your happiness depends on things being a certain way. It means you can love deeply without needing to possess, work passionately without being crushed by failure, care intensely without being destroyed by loss. And the foundation of this freedom is recognizing that the self doing all that caring and loving and working is itself as temporary as a wave, as dreamlike as a nighttime vision. So here we are at the end of this exploration, though really there's no end to this mystery. Every night will continue to offer you this teaching, this reminder of what you are beneath the surface personality. The question is whether you'll pay attention, whether you'll let this understanding infiltrate your daily experience, or whether you'll continue to believe the story of the separate self with absolute conviction. Neither choice is wrong. Consciousness is free to believe its own dreams, free to take itself seriously, free to laugh at its own cosmic game. But I'll tell you what I've found. There's immense relief in not taking yourself quite so seriously, in recognizing that the drama of your personal story is no more ultimate than a dream you had last week. This doesn't make life meaningless. It makes it playful. It allows you to show up fully, give your best, care deeply, and simultaneously hold it all lightly, knowing that when night comes, all of it will dissolve anyway, and you'll be fine. More than fine. You'll return to what you've always been beneath the costume of personality. If this conversation has meant something to you, if you feel that subtle shift in perspective that comes from seeing something true, I'd be genuinely grateful if you subscribed. These aren't just videos. They're invitations to look at consciousness differently, to question assumptions you didn't even know you were making. And more than subscribing, I hope you'll share your experience with this community. What has your relationship with sleep taught you about identity? Have you ever noticed that moment of reconstruction when you wake up? That mysterious process by which you comes back into being? Or maybe you've had experiences in meditation or contemplation that relate to this dissolution of the separate self. Whatever your story is, share it in the comments. We learn from each other. We wake up together, in both senses of that phrase. And maybe tonight, as you prepare for sleep, you'll do it a little differently. Instead of just collapsing into unconsciousness, maybe you'll pause at that threshold, that edge between waking and sleeping, and notice what it feels like to let go of everything you call yourself. Notice how willingly you surrender, how little resistance there is to the dissolution of your entire world. And perhaps, just perhaps, you'll recognize in that moment what the sages have been pointing to all along, that you are the awareness in which all of this appears and disappears, the unchanging background to every changing experience, the ocean that was never really divided into separate waves, just dreaming that it was for the pure joy of the game. Sleep well, wake gently, and remember, you've been practicing enlightenment all along. You've just been doing it with your eyes closed.